The Scorpion, Chapter 8. Now let us return to Rome, because since I was a boy, experts have been proclaiming that America is mired in its death throes, similar to the last days of Rome. Therefore, the discussion seems appropriate. So why did Rome fall? This is a topic of immeasurable length, and of course, there are many theories as to why. We can mention a few, but they generally come down to rot, financial and moral. Financial rot was especially true. The inequality of wealth in Rome was high. Cicero, a man who is constantly quoted today as a paragon of enlightenment, was hardly the wealthiest man in Rome, yet he owned 30 houses on today what we call the Italian peninsula. You see, he didn't want to stay in an inn with regular folk when he traveled. So that tells us something about Rome. Rome's Gini index was about where America is today, about 0.43. A Gini index is the measure of wealth inequality in a country. A Gini score of 0 means that everyone is equal. A Gini score of 1 means that one guy owns everything. Experts consider a Gini index of 0.4 or higher too high, and an index of 0.3 just about right. Britain in 1800 enjoyed a staggering Gini index of 0.6. In 1800, the top 10% owned 90% of the wealth. At that time, wealth inequality in Great Britain was at its highest, and America was the most egalitarian place on earth, economically speaking. Today, that trend is reversed as America has taken the lead in the world. Now more than ever, the top 10% own most of America's wealth. Running alongside of Rome's financial rot was its bedfellow moral rot. They run hand in hand. As the supreme leader becomes greedy, he extends out to subjugate a greater amount of people. Being successful in exploitation and slavery, he becomes fat, lazy, corrupt, murderous, then ultimately weak. Debauchery prevails. The people follow suit. What ensues is a morally bankrupt society that descends into the abyss until it can descend no more. In time, that leadership is overthrown by younger, more vibrant people who have no desire to be subjugated. This seems to be the way of man. It seems built into us. It's built into our biology. And so we as Americans should be mindful of that possibility. We'd all like America to have a good, long life. It's fair to say that we're not ready to call it quits after a couple of hundred years. And despite the claims that America's empire is finished, America, the empire, probably can limp along for another 2 centuries at worst. It takes a long time to slow down a speeding locomotive. Nevertheless, we should be wary as time moves quickly. My grandfather was born in 1893, only 100 years after the country was founded. And here we are in 2025, 130 years after my grandfather's birth and 230 years after the founding of the country. In the blink of an eye, the babies that I see today will live easily to the 300th anniversary of our nation, and their grandchildren will live 350 years after the founding of our country. I've always been fascinated by the idea that I can look upon someone today who will look upon someone who will live 150 years from now. Time moves rapidly. America's history moves accordingly. So we should be careful. We want to make sure we get things right. But are we going in the right direction? Let's look at the article by Professors Yan-Fung Chang and Joseph Chin-Ning Lau, who write about Southeast Asia's tilting toward China. Instead of reflexively running for cover or ginning up the case for war, let's ask a big so what? So what if Southeast Asia gets taken over by China? What has been our presence in Southeast Asia? It's not pretty. It's a story of war for raw minerals and a story of exploitation in sweatshops. The acquisition of the Grasberg mine in Papua wasn't an accident. It was clever sleight of hand by Allen Dulles that got us the goods there. Papua was a gold mine for us in every sense of the word. But to acquire these riches, we made the people poor. Listen to this, courtesy of Google AI. Yes, both Papua New Guinea and the Indonesian province of Papua are poor, despite being resource rich. In Papua New Guinea, nearly 40% of the population lives in poverty, with significant issues like lack of access to clean water, electricity, and a healthcare system that struggles to meet needs. In Indonesian New Guinea, comprising the provinces of Papua and West Papua, poverty rates are the highest in the country, exceeding the national average due to factors like educational gaps, budget mismanagement, and underdevelopment. The mainland of Indonesia doesn't fare much better. Along the way, we helped Suharto kill a million PKK commies. That's right, a million. Enter China, who offers more butter and less guns, and suddenly the folks in Southeast Asia are listening. Suppose that China does take over the joint. What are the ramifications for us? Not good. We would lose valuable trading partners and ready access to the vital resources of the region. So, agreeing that our presence is worthwhile and understanding that valuable blood and investment has been spilled there, what options do we possess? Guns and oppression are not likely to work. That was the way of Rome and Britain. What will work is what should have been offered decades ago, an offer that JFK attempted and was murdered for, a fair stake in the game. As in a domestic market, ownership abroad works. A rentier society does not. People do not want to be renters to a slumlord. And that is what the U.S. has been running throughout the world for the past 80 years. A slum that makes 5 Points look like Park Avenue.